Hello you guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Jess and today I'm very excited to talk to you guys about all of the books that I read in September. We only read, I think it was 5 books. Let's see, 6. Oh, 5 books. The 6th one we didn't get to, and I will explain a little bit further, but I'm going to go in the order that I finished these books, and I'm just excited to talk to you guys about them. This video is a little different because normally I talk to you guys about the books that I read and then we come up with the TBR, but this month I decided to do my TBR a little bit different, so if you guys haven't seen that, I just posted that yesterday. You can go ahead and, I don't know which side it comes up on, but you can go ahead and check that out. I actually really liked what I came up with and just like the random generator because I feel like it was a lot different and helps me get through my TBR that I have on Goodreads, and yeah, I was just very excited about it. So anyway, today we are going to get into the books that I read in September, and of course my camera is dying, so let me go change that. I'll be right back. Okay, we're back. Switched out the battery and now we may proceed. So I'm very excited to talk to you guys about the 6 books that I read over the month of September. Let's just get into it. The first book that I read was The Heiress, which actually I don't know who any of these are by. So let me look that up for you guys because I don't want to lie. I think that this one's by Rachel Hawkins, but yes, Rachel Hawkins. There we go. So The Heiress by Rachel Hawkins, and I rated this one 3 stars. This one was my book club book, and this is one that my friend chose. I gave it 3 stars, my friend gave it 3 stars, but our other friend gave it 4 stars, and I just kind of felt like it kind of gave me like Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo vibes, except with a few more stakes, which I don't know if that was a good thing or a bad thing. Like, I have nothing against Seven Husbands, but I don't know, I don't think it was my favorite book ever either. I think the downside to that was that I guessed what was going to happen pretty early on, because it's not even because it reminded me of Seven Husbands, but more so just like it was one of those situations that you could kind of guess like what's the least likely thing to happen, or like who maybe looks the most innocent, and that's clearly going to be the person that did the thing, and that's exactly what happened. I was intrigued by the story itself though, so just to kind of give you guys a background of what it's about, it's essentially about this person named Ruth. She went missing when she was very little, and she went missing for about 8 months, and then eventually her family finds her, and she had been with another family. Fast forward, she's gone through a bunch of different husbands over her lifetime, and all of her husbands are dying, and so, you know, everyone's like has their own rumors and like thoughts on what's going on with her. And eventually she decides to adopt a son named Camden because she never had kids of her own, and she just like needs an heir at a point. She's in a very wealthy family, so does need an heir, and Camden technically inherits everything that the family owns when Ruth passes away, which the family is not very happy about because he is adopted. So they're like, that's not really fair. He's not blood. He shouldn't be inheriting all of these things. So he lets them live in the house, whatever. And eventually one of his uncles dies, and that just kind of like brings him back to this house where he ran away from, if you will. Like, he's older now, so he's like has his own career, has his own place, the whole thing, but he's kind of like tried to like separate himself from that life. So when his uncle dies, he has to go back because there's a lot of things to take care of. The house needs a lot of work. And when he comes back, there's just like so much drama that happens, so many like crazy random things that happen. You're kind of just like constantly trying to find the truth of like what it is that even happened with this family, what Ruth's truth is as well, because you're getting her side of the story even though she has passed away. There are letters from Ruth that just explain each of her relationships and like just everything about her and like all of the rumors that had spread around this town. So it's definitely interesting, but it's just like not, it wasn't my favorite book in the whole world. And I did like that it had like these snippets. My friend who read it and gave it 4 stars said that she listened to it actually as an audiobook and that it was extremely enjoyable that way, whereas my other friend and I both read it and we didn't like it as much. So I don't know if maybe the audiobook is better for this one, but I didn't hate it. obviously. I just wasn't in love with it. And also, I don't know that it was like the best book club book because it didn't really stimulate that much conversation for us. Like, it just kind of was what it was. It wasn't like, oh my God, did you think that this was going to happen? So yeah, I don't know. I don't know what else to say about it. I thought it was fun, but I don't think it was like anything to write home about. So I ended up giving it 3 stars. The next book that I read was Part of Your World, which I gave 4 stars. I had been meaning to read this book and this entire series for a very long time. And I feel like I have finally, like, at this point, just put it off as long as I possibly could, because the second that it goes into the fall season, I'm no longer really interested in like romance books, because I don't know why that feels more like summer. But I was never really into the summer books this year either. Like, I don't know, I just like wasn't really in the mood for like a romance. So I finally just pushed myself to read this book, and I'm so glad that I did. Like I said, I gave it 4 stars. It was a little insta-lovey for me, which I don't love. Like, I don't like when there's an instant connection and instantly they're like, oh my God, I'm in love with this person. For example, at the very beginning of the book, the 2 characters meet and they hook up. And one of the characters is like, oh my gosh, I literally never do that. Like, I'm a 3 dates and then I'll maybe hook up with you kind of girl. So it just kind of felt like, obviously this time is different, but I don't love that particular like type of thing that happens in books. So that's sort of like where I knocked off a star, but everything else was truly perfect. I loved the characters. I loved everything. Basically what this book is about is it follows Alex Montgomery, who is a ER doctor, and she's also a twin, and she works at a hospital, and it's just like this really amazing big hospital. She is a Montgomery, and there's always been a Montgomery at this hospital. So she's sort of like upholding this piece of her family where she is sort of dedicated to this hospital. Not even sort of, she is dedicated to this hospital. She basically has to work there because there's always been a Montgomery that works there. And then we're also following Daniel Grant, who lives in this like really tiny town, and his family kind of has the same idea as the Montgomerys, except for all of the Grants have always been the mayor of this small town. They've always lived in the same house. Generations and generations have lived in this one house, and he currently uses the house to like rent out as a B&B. I'm calling her Alex, but is it Alexis? Oh my God, it's Alexis, not Alex. So it's clearly been a second since I read the book, but Alexis is driving through and she gets stuck in a ditch in this small town, and that's how her and Daniel end up meeting, and the rest is history. I don't want to give away any of the pieces, but honestly, like, the banter was so cute. The writing reminded me so much of Emily Henry's writing, and I just like ate this book up. I was obsessed with it. I loved it so much, and I totally understood the hype behind Abby Jimenez's writing. I had never tried an Abby Jimenez book before, and I am so glad that this was one of my first ones, and that this whole series is my first like set of books that I get to read from her, because I know she has a few others, but I'm super excited to have found a new author that I really like. So it was amazing. I liked it. It was 4 stars for me. So then immediately after that book, I just like couldn't resist, and I read Yours Truly, which I gave 5 stars, and this was the like next interconnected book in that series within Abby Jimenez's like worlds. What I really liked about both of these books, honestly, was that like all of the issues that they had, or all of the problems, felt extremely real. Any of the conflict that was happening felt like it was because it felt like it could be real life, or like when they were miscommunicating, it's because those things are actually very awkward to talk about in real life. I don't know, it just like was never that situation where you're like, oh my God, just talk to each other, talk about it. It was like actually how it would be in real life, and I really, really liked that a lot. I feel like I connect more with characters when they're making decisions that are like smart decisions, and maybe like decisions that I would also make. Not to say that they're like the perfect decision or anything, because that's how we come up with the story, but you can still try to make smart decisions and still make mistakes, and I just feel like that's exactly what these characters were doing, and it just made them feel so relatable. So I really, really liked that a lot. Just talking a little bit more about Yours Truly in particular though, this one follows Brianna Ortiz, and she is Alexis's best friend from the previous book, and so she's also a ER doctor, and basically now that Alexis is no longer in the picture at this particular hospital, she is up for a promotion, which she's super excited about, except they kind of put the promotion on hold because there's a new doctor. His name is Jacob Maddox, and they want to give him a shot at the job as well because he actually had the chief job at his last hospital. So they're like, just give it like a couple of weeks, let him acclimate to the job, and then from there we can like see who gets the job. And she's pretty annoyed by that because she's like, I've been here for a while, I deserve this job, like I was up for the promotion, and if he would have come a little later and I would have already gotten the promotion, it would have been me. So she's a little annoyed. There's a bunch of other complications that happen, and I don't want to get into them because I do not want to spoil a single thing about this. But basically, because of some of these complications, Jacob and Brianna start to have like a weird tense relationship, and Jacob is just like extremely anxious, and so he doesn't really know how to talk to her. So he starts passing notes to her, she starts passing notes back, and that turns into texts and phone conversations and so on and so forth. And so they still have a lot of conflict, and again, I think that it was like really nice because all of the conflict was like very real. But I don't know, it wasn't as insta-lovey as the last book either, which I really liked because, as you guys know, I don't really love the insta-love. So I really liked that a lot. I don't know what this book could have done better, and so I did give it 5 stars. I think that there have been other books that I've maybe read a little bit faster, but I still loved this book. Like I really had no notes, and it was like perfect. I thought that I loved Daniel from the last book, but then Jacob like was even better. So I don't know. I was obsessed. I loved them all. I'm just excited to read the next in the series, which I did not read in the month of September, but I will be reading in October. The next book that I read this month was The Search Party, and this one I gave 4 stars. This one is by Hannah Rochelle. This one has been on my list for a little while. I can't even remember where I first heard about it, but I think I've seen it in a few people's videos, and then I had it on my Libby for a while, and it was one of those things where I just like kept pushing off, and finally I was like, I'm ready for something a little on the spookier side. Let's go for it. Like, let's just read it, and I'm so glad that I did. Again, I gave it 4 stars. I feel like I had a pretty good reading month. Everything was like roughly 4 or 5 stars, except for the Aries. That one was 3, but otherwise I had a pretty good reading month. So this one is about a group of friends who have been friends for a while, but obviously like they grow up, they have kids, and now they have spouses or girlfriends, boyfriends, whatever, long-term partnerships. And one of the couples decides to just like leave everything behind in London. They're gonna move, and they move out to this like countryside area. They're creating a glamping business, and they decide everything's basically set up except they just like are waiting on permits. So while they're waiting on the permits, they're like, let's have everyone come over, test out the glamping, and see how it goes. The cool thing about this book was that like on the first chapter, I don't remember if it was chapter 1 or like the prologue, but from the get-go, you know that something crazy happens because you literally read it in the first chapter. It's formulated in a way that like makes it look like someone essentially just like jumped off of a bridge, and you don't know what happens from there. Like you don't know if they survived. You don't know if someone coerced them into it. You don't know if it was because they had their own internal demons. Like you have no information. And I feel like that was like the really cool part about this book, was that the whole time we had no info. Like who, what, when, where, why, and how was always a mystery along the way. And it was so neat because you would be reading and like you kind of went between timelines as well. So in some parts of it, you would know that someone was going to be okay because like you saw the future them safe. But then in the moment they maybe like disappeared or they were injured, and you're still like wondering if they're going to be okay, and maybe something else will happen, and so you're trying to like piece together this puzzle the entire time. And it was just like so fascinating the way that everything like ended up coming together. I just loved everything about it. It really points you in a direction that like I think maybe if I stepped out of the book a little bit, I probably could have guessed who did the thing, but because I was so into it, I just like didn't even notice the signs. And so I just thought it was so cool the way that it was written and the way that they ended up showing you who did the thing, and like circling all the way back to that first chapter and explaining what it was that you saw in the first chapter. So I just think it was really well done. It was another one of those situations where it just like did not for some reason give me that 5-star feeling, so I didn't give it 5 stars, but I really think like if I gave half points or whatever, it would be like a 4.5, 4.75, something along those lines, because it was honestly really good. Okay, and then the last book that I actually read, and then we have one book after that which I didn't finish, but we'll get into that in a second. But the last one that I read was The God of the Woods, and this one is actually my book club book for October. This one is my pick, and I'm very excited about it. I actually picked it because I saw somewhere on YouTube someone was talking about it and saying that it gave them like actually spooky vibes, like they were actually pretty nervous at night to read. And so I was like, that's perfect. I want to be scared. I didn't quite get that, but I really, really liked it a lot. And I just like, it was so fun to read. And even my friend's mom read it, and my friend hadn't read it yet. And so I was talking to her mom about it, and it was just like, it's super exciting to like talk about too. So I'm actually very excited to talk with my friends during book club. I don't know what it was about this book. I had a feeling from the get-go that I was going to love it. So I actually bought that one as a hardcover, which is in the other room. So I'm not going to get up and go get it, but normally I would just be like holding the book because I was just like so excited that I knew I was going to like it, and I really did. This book jumps around between timelines. It takes you between the 1950s all the way to the 1970s, and basically there's this very rich family who owns this like piece of land, has a main house on it, and then in the surrounding area there's also a camp. They have someone on the property or like on the premises who is like the camp director and like runs the camp. So the main family doesn't actually like run the camp, but they do technically own the camp. Back in the 60s, I believe it is, one of the sons goes missing. Nobody knows what happens. They figure out that like someone ended up probably murdering the kid, and they just like let that be the answer. Fast forward to the 70s, and the sister of that kid ends up also going missing, and it opens up this massive can of worms because they're like investigating the family, but then they're also like coming up on like things that don't really make sense from the last investigation. So then they're like, wait a second, did that person actually kill the first kid? Or like, are we just like, what's going on? Are we dealing with a serial situation, or is like, you know, this just a coincidence with the family? Like, what's happening? And you get perspective from the people who've disappeared, you get perspectives from the family, you get perspectives from like the camp directors, you get perspectives from the investigators. Like, it is just so well written and like so cool. It's almost written like literary fiction because you don't just get the mystery pieces, you get so much more than that. And I just was so fascinated the whole time by the book. I knew I was gonna love this one, but I really loved this one. So I just like, I think this is one that I will always recommend to people. So it wasn't necessarily super spooky. I wish that it was like maybe a little scarier, but I really, really liked it a lot. So if you're looking for something that is a little on the spookier side, highly, highly recommend. You guys should check this one out. One caveat, I did write it down in my notes that I meant to say, is that it is nearly 500 pages, but it does not feel like it. And I think I saw that on someone else's video where they're like, I don't know why a murder mystery is 500 pages. It's so much more than that. And so that's why. And I think that every page was deserved. Like, it was perfect. I loved it so much. And the last book that I was kind of alluding to, I started The Finish Line, which is the book by, I want to say Kate Stewart, but I feel like that's incorrect. Let me actually look it up before I lie. Oh my god, I was right. Kate Stewart. So this one is the third in the Ravenhood series, which like I don't even really know how to explain. Basically, it's about, the series itself is about this secret society of people who are like kind of trying to do good, but like in illegal ways, if you will. Like, they try to do the right thing, but then like they have to do like illegal things to do the right thing, and so it kind of is a little weird. But basically, this one really rich person who like owns a corporation ends up like just being negligent, and that results in a family dying, and the family member, like, well, just the mom and dad who work at the facility, and the family members are extremely upset about this, obviously. And so this is like their way of retaliation, is by like creating the secret society against other corporations who are doing this, and in particular against this corporation. And that's like the meat of the story. And I think that it would honestly be really interesting if it wasn't also randomly a romance. And it was just way too spicy for me. I'm like not into those types of books. The first and the second one we read as like a duo for our very first book club, and I just did not care for it, honestly. I didn't think it was all that intriguing, and I don't know. I don't even know why I even started the third one. I just like had already purchased it when I purchased the other two for book club, and so then I I was like, well, I might as well just finish the series and I'll read a little bit at a time. And I did not finish it in the month of September. So then I was like, I'm just going to keep reading it in October. And I couldn't get through it, guys. I couldn't do it. I DNF'd it. I think I was at like 20 or 30%. It's just not for me. I just didn't like it. I don't know. I just don't like it. So I couldn't read it. I can't possibly recommend the book, but if you guys want to look it up on TikTok, I feel like everyone on TikTok talks so highly about the series, and I don't know what I'm missing. Didn't like it. It was not for me. But that's all we have for this month's reading wrap up. I don't know why that was so like complicated for me to remember what to say, but I was actually very excited about the books that I read this month. I was a little nervous initially because last month I had just such a good reading month that I was like, oh my gosh, I have to have a good reading month again. And I really feel like I did. I had a good reading month, but it's kind of hard to compete with reading the entire Good Girl's Guide to Murder series all in one go. And again, if you guys have not seen my October TBR video, check it out. I will again have it up here somewhere. That's all I have for you guys today. So thank you guys so much. Next week, we will be back to our regular Tuesday, Friday schedule. That's it. So I'll see you guys next time. Bye guys.